The Chinese Grand Prix ended in the worst possible way for Ferrari. A mediocre performance wasn't enough, finishing behind McLaren, Mercedes and Red Bull, but there was also the double disqualification of Hamilton and Leclerc. In today's video, I want to analyze with you what were the irregularities of Ferrari, what were the driver's statements after the race, and also Vasseur's long-term vision. Before we start, please leave a supportive like, and if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any Formula 1 themed videos. Today's video is very important for understanding the current situation in Ferrari. After finishing in 5th and 6th position, the two SF25s were excluded from the final standings. I permit the disqualification that came as a result of excessive consumption of the skill plate. The measurements taken at the bottom of the car showed values lower than the regulatory 0.35 inches, 0.338582677 inches on the left and center, 0.334645679 inches on the right, in violation of Article 3.5.9 of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile Technical Regulations. In the case of Leclerc, the problem was the weight of the car. In fact, the SF25 number 16 was found to be underweight after technical checks, both with a full and empty tank, with a fixed value of 1,760 pounds below the minimum allowed. The scale was checked and recalibrated, confirming the irregularity, but how did we get to this situation? The race started uphill for both. At the first turn, Leclerc and Hamilton touched after overtaking an uncertain Verstappen. Oddly, Max had a poor start in the China Grand Prix.
The Ferraris
took advantage of it. However, there was contact that damaged the front wing of the Monegasque, who lost about 30 points of aerodynamic load. Despite the damage, Leclerc showed a better pace than his teammate, even managing to overtake him in the race. Car number 16 attempted an assault on the podium, but a mistake in braking at the end of the long straight forced him to give way to a reborn Verstappen. Hamilton, on the other hand, seemed to struggle throughout the race, far from the brilliant performance that had earned him victory in Saturday's sprint. And what did Leclerc declare at the end of the race? It was a tough race. Without the wing damage, we could have fought for the win. The initial incident was normal race contact, as I was in Lewis's blind spot. The pace was good, but the loss of load complicated everything. The Monegasque also highlighted how some changes made to the setup improved the feeling with the car, but were not enough to compensate for the aerodynamic damage. While Leclerc was satisfied with the setup changes, Hamilton was disappointed with the post-sprint setup, pointing the finger at the changes made to the single-seater after the sprint race. We tried a different approach, but it didn't work. The car was perfect yesterday. Today,
unmanageable. We have
changed small things, but the balance has worsened. We will not repeat this path. The 7-time world champion admitted to having followed setup directions already tested by Leclerc in Bahrain, but they proved ineffective for him. In the end, I had fresh tires and was pushing to the max, but Max was running like me. Frustrating. We'll need to review our work method. In short, after a weekend that started well with Hamilton's victory in the sprint race, Ferrari returns home after the China Grand Prix empty-handed. The double disqualification is a hard blow. Even more concerning are the inconsistent performances of the SF25. The team must strive to compete with their rivals, especially since it's unacceptable for Red Bull to have only one driver. That is, Verstappen scores more points than Ferrari at this point in the season, after 2 races from the start of the championship, 2 top-of-the-range drivers. Leclerc and 7-time world champion Hamilton score fewer points than Verstappen alone, indicating an issue. But let's see some behind the scenes on Hamilton's worn-out background. The team did not hide even on their own social channels and published a statement in which they fully acknowledged the technical irregularities that led to the exclusion of the SF25 from the final standings. Leclerc was disqualified for a car that was found to be underweight by 1 kilogram at the end of the race, a condition that, as the team explained, would be due to a one-stop strategy with high tire wear that can also result in a weight loss of over 1 kilogram. As we saw, for example, with Russell last year in Belgium, who dared to try a different strategy, he was disqualified because his car was lighter than it should have been, as he made one less stop than everyone else. The case of Hamilton is different. His SF25 showed excessive wear of the plank, the bottom that cannot go below 0.35 inches of consumption. Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile measurements detected a reduction of 0.0197 inches beyond the allowed limit, causing the immediate exclusion. But what really happened on Hamilton's car? The question arises spontaneously because only Hamilton exceeded the wear limit of the bottom. Both Ferraris had similar setups, and yet only number 44 ended up under the lens. According to internal sources, after Saturday's sprint race, Ferrari actually slightly raised the setup of both single-seaters for the race, taking into account the higher fuel load. However, the intervention on Hamilton's car may not have been sufficient. The suspensions of modern single-seaters are designed to have a non-linear response, that is, they must be able to best manage the weight variations between full and empty tank without touching the bottom. However, Hamilton had chosen a slightly softer setup than the Leclerc, a configuration that, while offering greater traction and comfort, increases the vertical excursions of the bottom, favoring its wear. On the contrary, Leclerc's stiffer setup helped keep the car more stable by limiting the plank's contact with the asphalt. Another important detail is that Leclerc, after the start contact with Hamilton, lost between 20 and 30 points of aerodynamic load. This inevitably reduced the vertical pressure on the car, further limiting the lowering of the bottom and therefore the wear of the plank. A side effect that paradoxically helped to avoid disqualification for excessive wear, but it was not enough to save him from the penalty for being underweight. In Formula 1, half a millimeter is a significant margin. The Maranello team has taken responsibility, acknowledging the errors in judgment both on the race strategy and on the management of the setup. The words used by Ferrari are clear: there was no intention to gain an advantage. We will learn from what happened today and make sure not to make the same mistakes in the future. And Ferrari finds itself once again on a very uphill road also for the next races, but in my opinion it is true that the variation of half a millimeter in Formula 1 makes the difference because it allows you to go either faster or slower, especially when the gaps are so minimal. On the other hand, I think that if a team takes a gamble with one less stop and inevitably the race turns out to be faster than the Pirelli data, with a lower tire consumption than expected, it should not be penalized because otherwise we do not break out of the mold, and Formula 1 needs to break out of the mold at this moment, otherwise it becomes too predictable. Ferrari, if it had followed the two-stop strategy with the Leclerc, would not have been underweight. It's true, other drivers have done the one-stop strategy and stayed within the allowed weight. This shows us how Ferrari really pushes the limits of measurements, perhaps even too much in this case when the conditions were unpredictable. The Maranello team has taken full responsibility, but we would also need a Formula 1 a bit more unpredictable from this point of view. Otherwise, it becomes too monotonous and we don't see different strategies among the various teams because maybe a team can't risk a strategy, otherwise it exceeds the weight limit. And the Shanghai race was impeccably managed by Piastri and Norris, who were the authors of a clean double. Controlled. Thanks to a contained tire degradation and a strategy well read by the technical staff, McLaren was able to adopt the one-stop solution, already sensing the race pace, monitoring cars like Stroll's. Haas also knew how to capitalize by adapting their strategy to the track conditions. In this positive scenario for some, Ferrari experienced its lowest point. And according to what emerged in the last few hours, the cause of the abnormal degradation of the bottom is not aerodynamic nor related to the front pull rod suspension, but rather to structural problems of the rear axle. The crux is right there, the rear suspension, approved in July 2024 along with the new gearbox. In fact, it does not guarantee the necessary rigidity, forcing technicians to increase closed park ground clearance to prevent damage at full load. Fuel. A precautionary measure that, however, undermines the stability of the aerodynamic platform in the most critical stages of the race. Paradoxically, Haas, which shares many mechanical components with Ferrari, did not suffer from the same problem because it does not have the same level of load and aerodynamic complexity. The situation closely resembles that experienced by Mercedes in the last season. The car shows potential in the sprint with just 77 pounds of fuel, but instability and downforce loss surface as the load increases, particularly in corners and during acceleration. The qualifications reiterated the problems of low rear load and unpredictability, with the SF25 struggling to stay within the optimal performance window. The technical director of OXR, who returned to Maranello last October, joined the SF25 project, codenamed 677, at an advanced stage. He is now intervening to improve its reliability and race behavior, but immediate solutions cannot be expected. The updates scheduled from the Bahrain Grand Prix will include changes to various technical areas to try to recover stability and consistency in performance. If we want, Ferrari has hit rock bottom, but at the same time has finally identified the origin of the problem. Now it remains to be seen how long it will take to transform this awareness into concrete results. In fact, I want to make a final reflection on the future of Ferrari by analyzing Vassar's statements. The Ferrari team principal has said the championship is not over. The double disqualification of Hamilton and Leclerc was a hard blow, and the performance swings of the SF25 also hit in China, dominant in the sprint, dull in qualifying and in the race. Vasori says the reasons are still unclear. He believes it's a question everyone on the grid could ask. We are at the limit with the tires, and small changes can make big differences. If we consider the loss of aerodynamic load for Charles's damaged wing, we can still be satisfied with the pace shown, but honestly, we were surprised by his rhythm. We had strong moments like the pole and the sprint win with Lewis and a good race pace from Charles, but we are not yet getting the most out of the car, and we need to improve on this. It's too early to judge 2025. After the FP2 in Australia, we seemed to be doing well, then everything changed in a few hours. We know that we can go from P6 to P1 in an instant, or vice versa. The margin between the top teams is 1 or 2 tenths per lap. We need to stay calm and work step by step. Today, McLaren have a great advantage, but it's not like the Red Bull of 2024. The gap is more contained. Let's remember that last year, everyone already gave the title to Red Bull after 2 races, and then the situation changed. It takes time and effort, but the championship isn't over. Regarding the disqualification, driver Vassar has intervened. There was no intention to gain illicit advantages. We will learn from this to prevent a recurrence. With 22 races left, the championship is far from decided. Lavasseur says the season is long with potential, and the team is already working to maximize it. Ferrari will have to react immediately starting from the next trip to Japan. In fact, after a week off, Formula 1 will face a deadly trio of Japan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. 3 challenging tracks with different characteristics where there will not be much margin for error. To hope to stay hooked to the train of the best, Ferrari will have to bring a package of updates to the track already in the next 2 weekends, hoping that the technical corrections have an immediate effect. And this is a significant technical and logistical challenge. Do you think Ferrari can still play its cards in this championship? Do you have a more positive or negative view on the future of the Red One? Tell me your opinion on all the topics we have discussed in the video. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos on the channel. Every day I keep you updated on all the Formula 1 news and specifically on Ferrari related topics. I'll leave you with some related videos here from Rastretuto. We'll see you in the next video.